So you might be relieved to hear that I'm not going to bend your ear about phase for this video. What we're going to look at is a different problem. So I'll just explain to you how this scene is set up. This is scene 5, and if I use the side view, we've got a planet with an atmospherical effect around it that's made up of volumetric cloud material. This is a sun effect that's also a volume cloud material, and a nebula, which is a 2D surface. And here where the planet is, I've got a corona wrapped around a terrain, so that gives me the effect of this atmosphere, and also puts this dark area in here because it's in the middle of the corona. There's actually a solid dark area. Right, and this lava-ish effect is just one of the planetary materials applied to a terrain. Now, looking at this, you might notice that that planet doesn't look that round. It's distorted, and this effect gets worse if you widen the field of view. This is due to the way that the Bryce camera works. So if I take this assembly now and move it off to one side, and no matter which way I rotate it, you can see that it's looking quite distorted, and when I come to render it, it doesn't look round at all, which is a problem. The same problem would occur with this sun as well, and the Bryce sun. So what's the solution to that? What we'll do is I'm going to move this corona, no, not that one, this corona and the nebula, and move it across to one side, and then I'll just have to move that back because they're moving relative to one another. Keep this fairly flat on towards the camera if I can. There we go, so that it doesn't look distorted, and then Control Alt, and because I've already set the sun to move on that command, I can now put the sun behind that. So now, okay, you can't really see that that's too badly distorted because it's still fairly close to the horizon, but you can see this one's badly distorted. So what I'm going to do is save this as example scene 5B. Just take a moment because the terrain's a high resolution terrain created by Horo, and then we'll find a way of dealing with this problem, which you might have already anticipated involves capturing these as flat images. So if I first of all go to face my planet here, and then I get rid of, you see these atmospheric effects are not really necessary now. That's quite a nice scene as it is. But I'll get rid of my corona and get rid of the terrain, so that I've got the planet on its own and I'm looking right at it, and then zoom in a bit, and then I'm going to turn the atmosphere off. So I don't want the effects of all these things. I can do that quite easily rather than switching things individually off by just using atmosphere off. So that gives me dark, black, empty space. Line this up so the camera's pointing right at it, like so, and just let that render out. Now the trick is here. Let me explain. If I was to use object masking on the atmosphere, then it would only detect the Bryce sphere, the default sphere, and it wouldn't know anything about this fading effect and the fact that you can see through the edge of the atmosphere, which means when I create a mask for this image, because I can't just use additive. If I just use additive, I have the problem that the stars will be visible through the dark area. So I need to create a mask so that it masks for the solid areas of the planet. If I just do the planet on the mask, we won't see the outer atmosphere, and if I just do the atmosphere, then it'll have a hard transition. So any stars or other astronomical features that are passing behind the planet on this boundary will vanish at the outer boundary of the atmosphere. So what I need is a mask that fades along this edge so that it allows a degree of semi-transparency. So it does show the atmosphere, but it also does allow things to pass behind, and then it becomes perfectly solid where the planet is, so that we don't have the issue of being able to see things through the planet. With nebulas it's not such a bad thing because you can use additive because they are transparent anyway, and you're just adding on to whatever's there, and that helps you the glowing star effect. You might also have noticed at this scale that the planet is taking a surprisingly long time to render. There's two things here. One, the planetary material itself uses curvature filtering to create small feature details on the surface that are extracted from the bump, and the other is that this volumetric material that's wrapped around the outside has to be, even though it's a very thin layer, generated at a high quality. Otherwise you get some strange clipping on the shadow regions. So these volume materials, in the case of a sphere, are built up with concentric circles starting at the origin of the sphere and are layered outwards. And so if you don't have them high enough resolution, then you don't get good shadow casting here, because it's working essentially off layers. Okay, so that's now rendered out. So go File and Export Image, and we'll just do the same thing last time. If we wanted to be more efficient, we could have made it square, but I'm not really that worried. So I'll just call this background 4. Save that. Now I'm going to modify the materials here. So we've got our atmosphere. Modify that material, give it full ambient output, and then take the planet, modify that material, and give that full ambient output there. So at this stage it should just be almost black and white. And again, just render this out, and that will be the mask. It'll be interpreted as grayscale when it's loaded in as the masking channel. So you can see I've got a hard edge there, which is the edge of the planet, and then the atmosphere, which is now glowing ambient due to the global ambient control which drives that effect, creates a transition zone that allows it to be a bit transparent, but still hopefully will display the atmosphere. The same process can be used to solve the problem if you've got a sun. So if you've got these corona effects, like the sun effect on the edge. So I'll just bring up this image. Okay, suppose you got this and it was out to one side and it was distorted. Then you could use this, and because it's so bright anyway, you could use it as its own alpha channel and create a 2D surface. The key to getting the 2D surface is that when you arrange it, it's got to be square on to the frame that you're viewing it through. I'm not really quite sure how the Bryce camera generates these distortions and why they turn out the way they do, but I've seen it in other render engines, and a better solution is to introduce some distortion. So for example, the fisheye lens that Horo created, if only used at a very low level of distortion, can be used to correct for this I think it's rectilinear distortion that's occurring through the Bryce camera. Now, I don't know which is right, physically speaking. I don't know how the human eye sees things, really. I just know that I can see that distortion and it doesn't look right, and which is why I'm looking for a way to correct it. Essentially, if you can get it looking about right in your scene, it must be about right. So while this is rendering out, we'll get our scene set up. And the important thing is that we've got to match, I'll reload this scene, we've got to match the lighting on the object to the lighting that's available in the scene. So once you decide where your planet's going to be and you swap it for this 2D surface, you can't then move it or move the lighting because it's not going to be appropriate. So we're going to position our planet here on its 2D surface and use this as its mask, which is not finished rendering yet, but that needn't stop us setting things up. So save your camera position, switch to the side view, modify the attributes of your camera to 0. Okay, and then we can go click on the little gold man, click on an empty square. You can see we've already got one backdrop in there. Load that one in. We won't load its mask in yet, but we'll get round to that. Check out of there and position this. We can do all the positioning without any problem, and then move it along the Z direction to it's in front of the camera. So we'll just make sure it's going to be out of the way of any other effects in the scene. If we get this set up, attributes, and link it to the perspective camera. So if I switch now to this view, we know that this is square onto the camera. So we'll now go to the material, and we're going to have this in ambient, yes, and we're going to use transparency, but at the moment we've just got the ambient channel driving that effect. Transparency we'll get round to. So there's our planet. Now if I was to just lift this up here, you can see it remains square. That's a good thing. So by working it in this view, but if you look at it now, it's actually no longer square onto the camera. That's the key. So you can't just turn your camera to that position and plonk it. You've got to actually slide it over there. So if I take this now and get rid of the assembly there, so I've just got my 2D face, you should see, well, it's blocking out the stars at the moment, but we can solve that one, that it's looking round. So I'll enlarge that so it's looking a bit more dramatic. Still looks round, and now we've just got the light consideration, because it doesn't look like it's being lit from this light source, because when I moved it round and captured it, obviously it changed the orientation of things. That's not such a problem though, because if we can use object space, we should be able to rotate it, provided I can find the right axis to do so, so it looks appropriately lit. So tilt it round like that, and then just maybe a bit more like so, and then you can see that this is the light source for this very wide field of view. So it's just letting the stars through now. This is rendered out. Go File, Export Image, and call this for underscore mask. Okay, go back to this scene now and go to the materials for this, go into the texture source editor and load, right, and need to navigate to wherever I save that. Here we go, here it is, that's our mask. So hopefully now, if things are set up correctly, we've got blend transparency set, that's good. We should be in a position to allow the stars to come through the back of that, and then it's only a question of whether or not it's interfering with any other volume materials in the scene. So just got to check that it's not clipping into any volume materials. We can see the sky, the stars through the sky around the planet, which looks a little bit weak now, but you can still see the atmospheres there, and that's because it's semi-transparent. So if necessary, you could boost the effect on the atmosphere to make that look a bit more solid, but essentially that's the process by which you can get round looking planets in your sky in a wide field of view scene, because I've seen quite a few, and I've done quite a few myself, where I've got the sun and the planets up here, and unless you place it more or less right in front of the camera, it just doesn't look round, and it spoils the effect. So there you go, that's how it's done, and that's how you deal with the transparency on this edge. If you've got a solid object like a moon, it's not such a problem. Just use object masking in the render mode and you can just render it out. It's just when you've got this soft edge that it becomes a problem. I'll probably look at using the object masking in another video, since I have mentioned that, but I have not covered it. Okay then, so that's the end of this video. Hope you found that interesting and useful, and that you'll be able to employ this technique in your own renders to get your planets and suns looking round. Cheers now.